3 experienced climbers walked into the Alaskan wilderness. They never came back. And what scientists found 20 years later will disturb you. The silence on Mount McKinley was broken only by howling wind, cutting through the Alaskan wilderness like a blade. 3 experienced mountaineers had vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but questions that would haunt investigators for 2 decades. Their names were buried in missing person files. Their families were left to wonder. Their story was reduced to whispered warnings around base camps. But what happened on that frozen peak was not an accident. And what scientists discovered 20 years later would challenge everything we thought we knew about survival, human endurance, and the secrets that glaciers keep buried in ancient ice. The morning of February 12, 2003 felt electric with possibility at the Talkeetna Ranger Station. 3 climbers stood at the permit desk, their gear perfectly organized, their confidence filling the small room. Dr. Marcus Chen, a glaciologist from the University of Colorado, had been planning this expedition for 18 months. At 34, he was already considered one of the leading experts on ice formation patterns in extreme environments. His research on the Denali Massif had earned him grants, recognition, and the deep respect of his peers. But Marcus was not just there for science. He was there to prove a theory that his colleagues called impossible. Standing beside him was Sarah Kowalski, a professional mountain guide whose reputation preceded her throughout Alaska. At 29, she had successfully guided over 200 expeditions up Denali's treacherous slopes. Her weathered hands carried the scars of countless rescues. Her eyes held the wisdom of someone who had faced the mountain's fury firsthand. Sarah knew every crevasse, every wind pattern, every deadly trap the peak could spring on an unsuspecting climber. If anyone could navigate the unpredictable conditions of an Alaskan winter, it was her. The third member of their team was Tommy Rodriguez, a 26-year-old documentary filmmaker from Los Angeles. His camera had captured some of the most breathtaking footage ever recorded in extreme environments. Tommy was not just along for the ride. He was there to document what Dr. Chen believed would be a groundbreaking discovery. Hidden deep within the glacier system of Mount McKinley, Chen was convinced there was evidence of climate patterns that could reshape our understanding of global warming. Tommy's job was to capture every moment of that discovery. But the ranger, processing their permits, had a bad feeling she couldn't explain. Janet Williams had seen thousands of climbers over her 15-year career, but something about this trio made her pause. Maybe it was the intensity in Dr. Chen's eyes when he described their planned route. Maybe it was the way Sarah kept rechecking weather reports showing a massive storm system moving in from the northwest. Or maybe it was Tommy's nervous energy as he tested and retested his equipment, muttering about battery life. Whatever it was, Janet lingered over their paperwork longer than usual. Their planned route was ambitious, even by Denali standards. They intended to establish base camp at 14,000 feet, then push toward an unexplored section of the Kaheltna Glacier, where Chen's satellite imagery had detected unusual ice formations. The area was remote, dangerous, and completely cut off from radio communication. Most experienced guides would have called it suicide. Sarah called it Tuesday. 5 days. That's how long until pickup. Those 5 days never ended. February 13th dawned clear and cold, the kind of deceptive calm that veteran mountaineers know to distrust. The trio loaded their gear onto a ski plane piloted by Bill Henderson, a bush pilot who had been flying climbers to Denali for over 20 years. As they lifted off from Talkeetna, Tommy captured footage of the endless white expanse stretching toward the horizon. The landscape below looked pristine, untouched, almost otherworldly in its beauty. None of them could have imagined it would become their tomb. Henderson dropped them at base camp without incident. The weather was holding, visibility was good, and their equipment check showed no problems. According to Henderson's logbook, the team was in high spirits as they unloaded their supplies. Dr. Chen was already taking ice core samples. Sarah was studying topographical maps. Tommy was filming everything with the enthusiasm of someone documenting a great adventure. Henderson promised to return in 5 days for pickup, weather permitting. Those would be the last words any of them exchanged with the outside world. Then the storm hit. The base camp simply disappeared. The first sign that something was wrong came on February 16th, when Henderson's return flight was grounded by a massive blizzard that had moved in faster than any weather model had predicted. Winds exceeded 80 miles per hour. Temperatures dropped to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Visibility fell to zero. The storm raged for 3 days, making any rescue attempt impossible. When the weather finally cleared on February 19th, Henderson immediately flew back to their base camp coordinates. He found nothing. Not their tents, not their equipment. Even the snow cave they had planned to build for emergency shelter. The entire base camp had vanished as if it had never existed. Henderson circled the area for hours. The glacier below showed no signs of an avalanche, no fresh crevasse formations, no disturbed snow patterns. It was as if the mountain had simply swallowed them whole. The search that found UNOTHE 50 volunteers. 2 weeks, $200,000 spent. Zero answers. The search and rescue operation that followed was one of the most extensive in Alaskan history. Teams of experienced mountaineers combed every accessible inch of the glacier system. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging scanned the ice for body heat. Ground-penetrating radar probed beneath the snow for buried equipment or remains. The search lasted 2 weeks, involving over 50 volunteers and costing the state nearly $200,000. They found nothing. Dr. Chen's colleagues at the university were baffled. Marcus was meticulous in his planning, obsessive about safety protocols, and intimately familiar with glacial environments. Everything pointed to a man who took every possible precaution. Sarah's friends in the guiding community were equally confused. Sarah didn't make mistakes on mountains. She had an almost supernatural ability to read weather patterns, to sense danger before it arrived, to make the hard decisions that kept people alive in impossible conditions. The idea that she had simply been caught off guard by the storm made no sense to anyone who knew her. Tommy's family flew up from Los Angeles, desperate for answers. His sister Maria spent weeks in Toquitna, interviewing anyone who had seen the trio before their departure. Tommy had called his parents the night before leaving, excited about the project, confident about their chances. He had joked about bringing back footage that would win him an Emmy. The Tommy she knew was not reckless. He was careful, methodical, and deeply respectful of the mountains he filmed. As months passed, the official investigation wound down. The case was classified as a mountaineering accident attributed to the sudden storm. The families held memorial services, but no bodies were ever recovered. The mountain kept its secret, and gradually the story of Dr. Chen, Sarah, and Tommy faded from public memory. But the questions never faded. Why did 3 expert climbers leave no trace? Why did an entire campsite vanish without a single piece of debris? And why did that storm arrive at the exact moment and location it did? Janet Williams, the ranger who had processed their permits, never forgot the unease she had felt that day. She kept copies of their paperwork in her personal files, along with newspaper clippings about the search. Every year on February 14th, she would pull out the folder and study their photos, wondering what warning signs she had missed. Bill Henderson continued flying climbers to Denali, but he never forgot the 3 passengers he had dropped off that clear February morning. He would often fly over the area where their base camp had been, scanning the ice below for any sign of them. Other pilots began to avoid the area entirely, reporting strange weather patterns and unusual atmospheric disturbances that made navigation difficult. The families never fully gave up hope. Dr. Chen's wife established a foundation that funded glacial research in his memory. Sarah's parents donated money to mountain rescue organizations across Alaska. Tommy's film equipment was donated to a school program that taught young people about documentary filmmaking. The scientific community moved on. Dr. Chen's research was completed by his graduate students. His theories about glacial ice formation were published posthumously, and his work contributed to our understanding of climate change. But the specific discovery he had been pursuing on that February expedition remained unknown. What none of them could have known was that the story was far from over, deep beneath the Kaheltna Glacier. Preserved in ice that had remained frozen for millennia, something extraordinary was waiting. Something that would eventually surface as the glacier shifted and flowed down the mountain. Something that would rewrite everything we thought we knew. About that February expedition, the ice was patient, as ice always is. It held its secrets for 20 long years, slowly moving, constantly shifting, gradually revealing what had been hidden in its frozen depths. A satellite image showed something that should not have been there, and it had a shape far too perfect to be natural. The first indication that the glacier was about to reveal its secrets came in the summer of 2019, when a team of climate researchers from the National Science Foundation noticed something unusual. In their satellite imagery, Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a glaciologist who had taken over much of Dr. Chun's abandoned research, was studying ice flow patterns when she spotted an anomaly in the Caheltna Glacier system. The ice appeared to be moving, faster than historical models predicted, and strange reflections were appearing in satellite photos that had no explanation at first. Martinez dismissed the readings as equipment malfunction or atmospheric interference. But as weeks passed, the anomalies grew more pronounced. Something dark was showing through the ice, something with a shape far too geometric to be a natural formation. By early 2020, Martinez had convinced her department to fund a preliminary expedition. Then the pandemic hit, shutting down research. Projects worldwide. She could only watch helplessly as the anomalies grew larger and more defined in each new satellite image. Whatever was trapped in the ice was getting closer to the surface with each passing month. The breakthrough came in March 2023, when a routine geological survey flight captured footage that would change everything. Pilot Sarah Chen, no relation to the missing Dr. Marcus Chen, was flying a standard mapping mission when her camera operator noticed something glinting in the afternoon sun, about 200 feet below the glacier's surface, embedded in what appeared to be a natural ice cave or metallic objects. It clearly did not belong in pristine wilderness. The footage was immediately classified by the National Park Service, but not before several researchers had seen enough to know they were looking at something unprecedented. The objects appeared to be equipment, camping gear, but the arrangement was all wrong. Instead of being scattered across the surface, as debris from an accident would be, everything was organized in a deliberate pattern, as if it had been carefully placed there. Inside the ice cave, Dr. Chen's journals were perfectly preserved, and the final entries were written in a shaking hand. Dr. Martinez assembled a team of specialists, including ice cave experts, forensic anthropologists, military personnel trained in high-altitude recovery operations. The expedition that departed Talkeetna on June 15, 2023, brought equipment worth over $500,000, including thermal boring devices, specialized climbing gear, communication systems that could penetrate ice. What they discovered defied every expectation. The ice cave was not a natural formation. It had been carved with precision, its walls smooth and deliberately shaped. The metallic objects seen in satellite imagery were indeed camping equipment, but arranged in a pattern that suggested intelligence, purpose, and most disturbing of all, recent human activity. Inside the cave, perfectly preserved by sub-zero temperatures, they found Dr. Chen's research journals. The leather-bound notebooks were frozen solid but completely intact. Their pages were filled with handwriting that became increasingly frantic as the entries progressed. The early entries described routine scientific observations, ice core samples, weather measurements. But as Martinez's team carefully photographed each page, the content became increasingly bizarre. Dr. Chen had discovered something in the glacier he couldn't explain. His notes described ice formations that appeared to be artificial, geometric. Patterns carved into the glacier walls, following mathematical principles he did not recognize. He wrote about temperatures that didn't match his instruments, compass readings that made no sense, and a deep humming sound that seemed to come from within the ice itself. Then came the entries about his teammates, and those were the most disturbing. Of all, Sarah Kowalski, the experienced guide who never made mistakes, had begun acting erratically. According to Chen's notes, she was leading them deeper into the glacier system, following routes that weren't on any map, claiming she could hear voices calling to her. From beneath the ice, Tommy Rodriguez had become obsessed with filming everything. But his camera equipment was malfunctioning in ways that violated basic physics. His footage showed images that weren't visible to the naked eye. The final entries in Chun's journal were nearly illegible, written in a shaking hand that suggested extreme fear. He described a discovery he couldn't fully comprehend. Something buried deep in the glacier that had been waiting for them specifically. The ice wasn't just preserving whatever they had found. It was protecting it, keeping it hidden until the right people came looking. At the end of the tunnel was something that rewrote human history, or at least that's what the scientists thought, before the ice sealed itself shut again. Martinez's team spent 3 days carefully excavating the ice cave. In addition to the journals, they recovered Tommy's camera equipment, Sarah's climbing gear, and personal effects from all 3 missing mountaineers. But the most significant discovery came when they followed a tunnel leading deeper into the glacier, a passage carved with tools. It's far more sophisticated than anything the 2003 expedition could have carried. At the end of that tunnel, embedded in ice that carbon dating would later reveal to be over 10,000 years old, they found something that challenged every assumption about the history of human civilization in North America. The object was clearly artificial, constructed from materials that did not exist in 2003, arranged in a configuration that suggested technology far beyond anything that's available to modern science. The implications were staggering. Either Dr. Chen, Sarah, and Tommy had discovered something waiting in the ice for millennia, or they had somehow become part of something much larger than a simple mountaineering expedition. The arrangement of their equipment, the precision of the ice cave, the mathematical patterns Chen had described in his journal. All of it suggested that their disappearance was not an accident. It had been an appointment. As Martinez's team prepared to extract the mysterious object, they realized something deeply unsettling. The ice around it wasn't melting despite the thermal equipment they were using. The temperature readings showed it should have been liquefying rapidly. Instead, it remained perfectly solid, as if being maintained by some external force. The object itself defied classification. It appeared to be constructed from a metal that matched no known element. Formed into shapes that followed geometric principles human mathematics couldn't adequately describe. When they tried to photograph it, the images came out distorted, showing patterns and configurations not visible to the naked eye, exactly as Tommy's malfunctioning equipment had behaved 20 years earlier. Every time they tried to remove it, the glacier responded, like it was alive. Every attempt to extract the object triggered violent reactions from the glacier itself. The ice would crack and shift, creating unstable conditions that forced the team to retreat. Seismic monitors detected tremors originating from deep within the mountain, tremors that followed no known geological pattern. It was as if the glacier was actively resisting their efforts. Dr. Martinez made the difficult decision to document everything in place rather than risk a catastrophic ice collapse, as her team worked to photograph and measure the object from every angle. They noticed something that chilled them more than the sub-zero temperatures. The ice around the object wasn't just refusing to melt. It was growing. New layers were forming at a rate that defied every known principle of glacial science. 3 days later, pilot Sarah Chen returned to extract the research team. What she saw through her aircraft's windows made her question her own sanity. The ice cave that Martinez's team had spent days excavating was gone. In its place was solid glacier ice, as if the entire site had been sealed up again by forces beyond human understanding. The footage was classified. The families were told a lie, and Martinez was reassigned somewhere. Underground, the footage from Martinez's expedition was immediately classified at the highest levels of government security. The official report stated that the team had discovered some interesting ice formations and recovered personal effects from the missing mountaineers, nothing more. The families of Dr. Chen, Sarah, and Tommy were finally given closure. They were told their loved ones had died in an avalanche and their remains had been recovered after 20 years in the ice. But the truth was far more complex. In the weeks following the expedition, strange reports began emerging from researchers around the world. Glaciologists in Antarctica reported unusual instrument readings, patterns that matched the mathematical sequences found in Dr. Chen's journal. Seismologists detected low-frequency vibrations emanating from ice sheets across the globe, vibrations that appeared to be increasing in intensity and coordination. Dr. Martinez found herself reassigned to a classified research facility in Colorado. Her work on the Alaskan discovery was deemed too sensitive for public consumption. All equipment used in the investigation was confiscated. Every team member was required to sign non-disclosure agreements that would remain in effect for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, in a secure laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, scientists worked around the clock to analyze the samples Martinez's team had managed to collect before the site sealed itself. The ice core samples contained microscopic structures that matched nothing in the known biological or geological record. Metal fragments scraped from the mysterious object showed atomic compositions that challenged the periodic table itself, and then the dating results came back, and they were impossible. Some samples appeared to be millions of years old, while others seemed to exist outside of time entirely, as if they had been frozen at the exact moment of their creation and remained unchanged despite the passage of eons. It wasn't just Alaska, it was everywhere. It was accelerating. As months passed, the investigation expanded beyond Alaska. Satellite imagery revealed similar anomalies in glaciers across the world, dark shapes moving beneath the ice in patterns too organized to be natural. Research stations in Greenland reported equipment malfunctions that matched the descriptions in Tommy Rodriguez's recovered camera logs. Antarctic expeditions found carved ice tunnels that had not been there in previous surveys. The pattern that emerged suggested a global network of sites, all connected by some underlying intelligence that had been dormant for millennia. Dr. Chin's team hadn't just stumbled upon an isolated artifact. They had discovered evidence of something vast, ancient, and possibly still active beneath the world's ice sheets. Government agencies from multiple countries began coordinating their responses, sharing classified information about similar discoveries in their own territories. The public remained unaware, told only that climate research was revealing new insights into glacial formation. Military leaders and scientific advisors grappled with implications that threatened to reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. It wasn't a coincidence that those three people went up that mountain. It was never a coincidence. The most chilling aspect of the investigation was the realization that the discoveries weren't random. Each site had been found by researchers who fit a specific profile, individuals with particular combinations of expertise and psychological characteristics. Dr. Chen's background in glaciology, Sarah's intimate knowledge of mountain environments, Tommy's ability to document visual anomalies had made them the perfect candidates for their unwitting role as discoverers. Analysis of their personal histories revealed subtle influences that had guided their paths toward that February expedition. Scholarships that had directed Chen toward glacial research, job opportunities that had brought Sarah to Alaska, film projects that had given Tommy experience with extreme environment documentation. The influences were so subtle, so carefully arranged over decades that they appeared to be coincidences until viewed as part of a larger pattern. Dr. Martinez began to understand that her own career trajectory had followed a similar path. Her interest in glacial anomalies, her access to satellite imagery, even her assignment to study Dr. Chen's abandoned research, all of it seemed to have been orchestrated by forces she couldn't identify or comprehend. She was being guided towards specific discoveries that served purposes beyond her. Understanding the psychological profiles of researchers who had made similar discoveries worldwide showed remarkable similarities. They were all individuals who combined scientific discipline with intuitive thinking, people who could perceive patterns that others missed while maintaining the credibility to document their findings. They were, in essence, the perfect bridge between human science and something far more advanced. Researchers on different continents working on classified projects they couldn't discuss with each other were having the exact same dream. As winter approached in 2023, seismic activity around glacial sites increased dramatically. Ice sheets that had remained stable for centuries began showing signs of coordinated movement. Research stations reported equipment failures, communication blackouts, and personnel experiencing shared dreams that featured mathematical sequences identical to those found in Dr. Chen's journal. The dreams were perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the entire investigation. Researchers from different continents, working on classified projects they couldn't discuss with each other, were experiencing identical visions. They saw vast chambers carved from ice, geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. and the sensation of being observed by intelligences that existed on scales beyond human comprehension. Dr. Martinez found herself among those experiencing the dreams, visions that left her exhausted and filled with knowledge she couldn't quite grasp. She saw Dr. Chen's final moments, not as recorded in his journal, but as they had actually occurred. The three mountaineers hadn't died in that ice cave. They had been transformed. The dream showed her Sarah Kowalski moving through ice tunnels. With impossible grace, her knowledge of mountain environments enhanced by an awareness of geological processes spanning millions of years. Tommy Rodriguez continued to document everything, but his cameras now captured spectra of light invisible to human eyes, recording events that occurred across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Chen pursued his research with access to data, encompassing the entire history of planetary climate. They weren't dead, they had been recruited. The object buried in the glacier was not a discovery, it was a selection mechanism. The realization that the 2003 expedition had been a recruitment. Rather than a tragedy, forced a complete reevaluation of the investigation. The object buried in the glacier wasn't just a discovery waiting to be found. It was a selection mechanism, identifying individuals with the specific combination of skills and psychological characteristics needed for purposes that remained unclear. The entities in the ice were not alien in the conventional sense. They were terrestrial, ancient beyond human comprehension, predating human civilization by millions of years. They had been dormant during Earth's warm periods and active only during ice ages. When their frozen environment provided the optimal conditions for their existence, the current awakening was triggered by climate change, but not in the way most humans understood it. As global warming melted surface ice, it was exposing deeper, more ancient ice that had remained frozen for geological ages. This ancient ice contained the preserved consciousness of entities that had been waiting for the right combination of planetary conditions and human development to resume their activities. The recruited researchers served as conscious interfaces. Their human intuition and creativity combined with vast databases of geological and atmospheric information to solve problems on scales that pure artificial intelligence couldn't handle. They were becoming part of a hybrid consciousness that spanned continents, processing information across timescales that encompassed the entire history of planetary climate. Martinez understood she was being offered the same transformation. The dreams weren't just visions, they were invitations. She could choose to resist, to maintain her individual human consciousness, and eventually lose her mind as it proved inadequate to process the expanding awareness being forced upon her. Or she could accept the integration, allowing her consciousness to expand beyond its biological limitations while retaining her essential identity as part of something vastly greater. In December 2023, Martinez's security clearance was suddenly revoked. No explanation, no warning, just gone. The first signs that Dr. Martinez was running out of time came in December 2023, when her security clearance was abruptly revoked. No explanation was given, just a terse email from her department head instructing her to clear out her office. Her access to classified files was terminated. Her research materials were confiscated. Her team was disbanded without warning. But by then, it was already too late to stop what had been set in motion. The dreams had intensified to the point where Martinez could barely distinguish between sleeping and waking. She found herself drawing geometric patterns. In her notebooks, complex mathematical equations she didn't remember learning. Her apartment walls were covered with satellite images of glacial formations from around the world, connected by red string and patterns that seemed to pulse with their own internal logic. To anyone observing from the outside, she appeared to be descending into obsession, possibly madness. But Martinez knew better. She was being prepared. Through encrypted communications and back-channel information sharing, she discovered that anomalous activity beneath global ice sheets was accelerating at an exponential rate. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, seismologist at an Antarctic research station, had been measuring tremors originating from directly beneath the ice sheet. The vibrations followed mathematical progressions that matched the sequences found in Dr. Chen's journal, and the tremors were getting stronger and more frequent, building towards something that Tanaka's instruments couldn't adequately measure. In Greenland, atmospheric physicist Dr. Erik Larson reported electromagnetic readings that defied conventional understanding. His equipment detected energy signatures emanating from deep within the ice sheet, signatures that pulsed in coordination with the seismic activity Tanaka was measuring in Antarctica. The two phenomena were separated by thousands of miles but synchronized to the microsecond, suggesting a level of coordination that implied vast intelligence. Then the Siberian research station went completely silent. 12 researchers vanished. No signs of struggle, no evacuation, just gone. Dr. Anna Vulov and her team of 12 researchers had stopped responding to communications. In early January 2024, satellite imagery showed their facility intact but abandoned. Their last transmission had been a data burst containing ice core analysis results that showed the same impossible atomic structures Martinez's team had discovered in Alaska. The recruitment process is entering its final phase, and you may already be part of it. As Martinez compiled reports from her network of researchers, a terrifying picture emerged. The recruitment process wasn't random or isolated. It was systematic, methodical, and global in scope. Every major ice sheet on the planet was showing signs of the same underlying activity. Something was awakening beneath the frozen surface of the Earth. It was gathering the human minds it needed for purposes that remained hidden. The pattern that emerged suggested something devastating. The recruited researchers were not victims of circumstance. They were the culmination of a preparation program that had spanned generations. Every major breakthrough in glaciology, climatology, and atmospheric physics had been subtly influenced to accelerate human understanding of ice-based phenomena. The researchers being recruited weren't random. They were the result of a long, patient selection process. Government agencies had become aware of the global pattern, but their responses were fragmented and inadequate. Military installations near major ice sheets reported equipment malfunctions and personnel experiencing shared hallucinations. Intelligence services detected coordinated electromagnetic activity originating from beneath glaciers on every continent, but lacked the scientific expertise to understand what they were observing. Martinez realized that containment was impossible. The entities beneath the ice had been planning this awakening for millennia, preparing for the moment when human civilization would develop the technological sophistication they needed. The truth about what happened on Mount McKinley in 2003 was not a tragedy. It was an appointment that had been scheduled for millennia. Dr. Chen, Sarah, and Tommy didn't vanish into the ice. They became part of something far greater than human understanding. As glaciers worldwide continue their ancient awakening, one question remains. When the entities beneath the ice finally reveal their purpose, will humanity be ready for what comes next? Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some are meant to find you.